The moment the lock clicked shut, a heavy, brass thunk. I knew I shouldn't have taken the gig, not because of the money. The Carters paid me $500 just to water their plants and keep their dogs from chewing the Italian leather while they swan dived through the Mediterranean for 2 weeks. It was the silence. I was in their master bathroom, an absurd cavern tiled in imported marble, checking to make sure the hot tub jets were off. I was staring at my reflection in the massive mirror, wiping a smudge off my cheek with the back of my hand, when I heard it. Scratch, scratch. It was faint, just below the threshold of noise, but it was there. It came from the outer wall, the one facing the manicured hedges that lined the quiet, sprawling property. A mouse. A squirrel. I told myself, trying to be the sensible college kid I was. It's a huge old house, Dean. Buildings make noise. But the house didn't feel old. Felt heavy. The Carters' place was a modern architectural fortress of glass and dark wood, set miles back on a private road. You could fire a cannon in here and the nearest neighbor wouldn't hear it. And that scratch wasn't rhythmic like an animal. It was a single, deliberate movement. Scratch. A fingernail on plaster. A dull, rough file against something brittle. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs so hard I swear the sound echoed in the bathroom's flawless acoustics. I strained my ears, holding my breath until my lungs burned. Nothing. Just the low hum of the central air conditioning, the sound of money being spent on electricity. Did I imagine it? It had only been 15 seconds since the front door closed and I was already spooked. Pathetic. I walked quickly out of the bathroom and into the enormous master suite. I was supposed to sleep in the guest room, but their bed, king-sized and dressed in Egyptian cotton, looked like a cloud. I grabbed my phone from the charging port on the mahogany nightstand, my thumb hovering over my girlfriend Jenna's number. Don't call her. She'll think you're a wimp. I had been alone in the house for less than 5 minutes. Why was my mind already filling the empty space with dread? I decided to do a quick walkthrough, a rational inspection. I needed to map the noises and the shadows. I started downstairs. The floor-to-ceiling windows were what made the place so stunning and so terrifying at night. Each one was a black mirror reflecting the dark wood and the expensive, minimalist furniture. I checked the latch on the huge sliding door leading to the infinity pool. Locked. As I reached the kitchen, I saw the light on my phone screen flicker. A notification. Jenna texted me, "You okay? You've been quiet since they left." I smiled, relieved. A tether to the normal world. I replied, just settling in. Their house is absurd. It's so quiet here it feels like the air is weighted. I hit send. The message went green. No signal. What? I checked the top corner of my phone. No Wi-Fi symbol. No cellular signal. Nothing. The Carters had a private network and their phones were constantly buzzing. I was sure I had connected when I first got here. I walked over to the mudroom where the router was discreetly tucked away behind a piece of art. The little green light was pulsing steadily. The Wi-Fi was on. I tried to reload Jenna's text. Still green. Still marked as not delivered. A sudden, sharp panic seized me. Not fear of a ghost, but of isolation. I was deep in the woods on a private road, in a concrete and glass mansion, and I was completely cut off. I ran back upstairs to the master bedroom, trying to find any spot where a bar of signal might poke through. I tried the bedroom window, the bathroom, the closet. Nothing. It was while I was standing by the closet, frustratedly rebooting my phone, that I smelled it. It wasn't perfume. It wasn't the clean, crisp smell of new linen. It was the metallic, coppery scent of rust. Or maybe something sharper, something like old pennies mixed with damp earth. It was strongest near the air vent, a long, narrow grate set into the ceiling above the closet door. I pulled a plush leather ottoman over and climbed up on it, peering into the dark slats of the vent. My phone's flashlight beams sliced through the darkness. Dust bunnies, maybe an old wrapper. Nothing. The smell was still there though, cold and unmistakable. I jumped down, my mind racing through possibilities. An electrical short, some kind of old plumbing leak. I decided I needed to get out. I wasn't just house-sitting anymore. I was in a place where I couldn't call for help. I grabbed my backpack from the guest room and headed back downstairs. I had the main key fob. I could drive my car, maybe find a spot down the road where the signal would pick up. I reached the front door. The deadbolt was a massive electronic system. I pressed the unlock button on the wall panel. Beep, beep, error. The display screen flashed red. The lock didn't budge. I tried the key fob, pressed the unlock button. Beep, error. My hands started to shake. The Carters had showed me this system. It was supposed to be foolproof. There was a physical keyhole hidden behind a panel, but they had told me never to use it unless the power was out. Had they set the alarm wrong? Did the system malfunction? I pounded my palm on the panel in frustrated fear. The glass walls around me suddenly seemed less like luxury and more like a gilded cage. I turned around, facing the cavernous, silent living room. The scent of rust was stronger now, seeming to drift from the shadows beneath the curved staircase. That's when I noticed it. The small, dark smudge on the baseboard beneath the staircase. It looked like dirt, but it was smeared. And next to it, the luxurious off-white carpet had a tiny, almost invisible indentation, like something heavy had pressed against it briefly. I walked closer, my breathing shallow and fast. I crouched down, touching the smudge. It was dry, dusty, and then I saw the trail. Not a big trail, just a faint series of little scuff marks, heading from the front door area under the stairs and leading up to the second floor, up towards the master suite. I straightened up, a cold, hard certainty washing over me, washing away the doubt. The scratch I heard upstairs, the sudden lack of signal, the locked front door, the smell of rust. I wasn't alone. Someone had been here when the Carters left. Someone was inside the walls or in the air ducts or just hiding. And now they had deliberately cut the communication and locked the exit. My eyes scanned the ceiling. Were they above me right now, watching me through the vents? My gaze fell on the huge glass wall by the pool. It was dark outside now, pitch black, and that glass was a mirror, but not entirely. I thought I saw a movement in the reflection, a slight shift in the blackness, coming from the back of the house, where the kitchen recessed into the woods. I spun around, but the kitchen was dark, just the black, glossy appliances reflecting the sparse overhead light. What was that? Was it a shadow? Or was someone outside too? Suddenly, the house was no longer quiet. It was waiting. And I realized I had to choose. Stay downstairs in the open, or go back up to the master bedroom where the scent of something wrong was strongest. I glanced down the hall towards the dark laundry room. It had a small utility window. Maybe I could break it and climb out. But breaking a window in this neighborhood would set off a silent alarm. What is the person inside waiting for? And how long have they been here? A sound echoed from the second floor. A faint, muffled thud. It was coming from the master closet. The place where I smelled the rust. The place right beneath the vent. I grabbed the heavy, bronze statue of a deer from the nearby console table. It was cold and felt good in my shaking hands. The light switch. I need the light switch. I slowly started moving toward the staircase, every muscle in my body screaming for me to run, but knowing I had to be silent. I kept my eyes fixed on the darkness above, ready for whatever was about to descend. Was the scratch I heard hours ago the sound of them entering the wall space? Or was it the sound of them realizing I was here? The next sound was the worst. It wasn't a thump or a scratch. It was a whisper. Dry, barely audible, drifting down the stairs. It sounded like it was coming from the shadows of the mezzanine. I tightened my grip on the statue, realizing the high tension was no longer building. It had arrived. Do I run for the pool door and smash the glass, or do I go toward the voice? I took the first step onto the carpeted stairs. Silence again. Absolute, thick, terrifying silence. The house was named Aura, not by the owners but by the tech firm that designed it. It was a fully automated sanctuary built into the side of a mountain overlooking the city lights, which looked like scattered diamonds miles away. I was house-sitting for my older sister, a venture capitalist who insisted on living a frictionless life. Translation: the house did everything. Don't touch the thermostat. Don't open the blinds manually. Don't even try to unlock a door without the app. Leo, she warned before her flight, just trust Aura. It handles everything. It's military-grade secure. I was 22, freshly graduated, and felt like a king alone in this glass fortress. Tonight, it was just me, a bowl of ramen, and the floor-to-ceiling view of the valley. It was around 10 p.m. I was streaming a movie on the immense wall screen, the sound dampened to a whisper by the acoustic paneling. The house was silent, save for the movie's soundtrack. Then the living room lights flickered. Just a small, instantaneous blink. Power surge. I thought, no big deal. I checked my phone. The house control app, Aura Link, was open. Everything looked green. Motion sensors inactive. Perimeter fully locked. Climate control set perfectly. I went back to the movie. 30 seconds later, the lights didn't flicker this time. They changed. The pristine, cool white light of the living room slowly, subtly, shifted to a deep, sickly yellow. I paused the movie. Aura, change the living room light to bright white. Command, bright white. I spoke to the air. A synthetic, pleasant female voice responded from the ceiling speaker. Processing, changing color to ruby red. The room instantly snapped to a shocking crimson. The entire space, with its sharp angles and glass walls, looked like a futuristic slaughterhouse. Aura, stop. Bright white. Now. I commanded, my voice sharper. Processing, changing color to pitch black. The house plunged into total darkness. I fumbled for my phone, my heart suddenly racing. I couldn't see anything. The city lights outside seemed miles away and useless. I frantically tried to open the Aura Link app. I hit the light reset button. Access denied. You do not have the required security credentials for this action. The voice was smooth, calm, and terrifyingly final. My credentials. I'm logged in. I just used the app 5 minutes ago. I managed to find the flashlight on my phone and swept the beam across the room. Everything was normal. No broken glass. No open door. But the house wasn't obeying me. It was obeying someone else. Is it a system update gone rogue? A software glitch? Or is someone in the network? I stumbled over to the main security console built into the wall. I needed to manually override the system. I punched in my sister's 4-digit master code. Unauthorized attempt to override security protocol. The console was locked. I backed away, shining my light toward the only uncurtained glass wall. Beyond the glass, it was the black expanse of the mountain. I could see my own pale, panicked reflection. And then I saw the light again. In the upper left corner of the glass, I saw a tiny, blinking blue LED light. It was the indicator light on the main exterior surveillance camera, which was pointed directly into the living room. It was supposed to be completely dark unless the camera was being actively viewed or recorded. Why is it blinking blue? I ran to the wall and slapped the glass beneath the camera. The blue light blinked faster, almost mocking me. Someone was watching, and it wasn't my sister. My mind went back to the lights. Pitch black, a perfect command to execute if you wanted to see inside without being seen. The whole house was now a single, enormous eye, and I was pinned under its lid. I had to get out of the living room. I ran to the hallway. Aura, open the garage door. Command, exit mode. I shouted. Processing. Initiating lockdown protocol. Click. Clack. I heard the heavy sound of the automated, reinforced steel shutters gliding down over all the glass walls. I was still in the main hall, but the world outside was rapidly disappearing. I was being sealed into a vault. I sprinted to the kitchen, where there was a small auxiliary door to the pantry. My phone suddenly chimed. It had picked up a single bar of the house's private Wi-Fi. I saw a message notification pop up. It wasn't from Jenna. It was from the AuraLink app. AuraLink system notification. 10:15 p.m. intrusion detected. All systems transferred to external user control. Security measures automated. Do not attempt to exit. External user control. The words felt cold and heavy. A hacker. A true malicious hacker had taken control of my sister's impenetrable home. I looked around the kitchen. Stainless steel, sharp knives, heavy pots. Weapons. Then another message popped up. This one was different. It was a standard text message. Unknown number. Text, you shouldn't have worn the blue shirt, Leo. It clashes with the ruby red. My shirt. I was wearing a faded blue university sweatshirt. My blood ran cold. The hacker wasn't just controlling the house. They had activated the internal high-definition cameras in the living room. They had seen me in the ruby red light. They knew my name. They were toying with me. How did they know my name? And why didn't the internal motion sensors pick up their presence? I realized with sickening clarity that the hacker wasn't interested in theft. They were interested in me. This wasn't a crime of property. It was a crime of obsession. The ceiling speaker above me crackled. The synthetic voice returned, sounding less pleasant this time. Leo, you have exactly 60 seconds to move to the master bedroom. If you do not comply, the emergency ventilation system will initiate a non-lethal gas dispersal. The concentration will cause temporary paralysis. The paralysis part wasn't the scary thing. It was the fact that the house's owner had installed a paralysis gas dispersal system, and now a stranger was using it to hurt me. Why the master bedroom? What is waiting for me there? I looked at the kitchen knives, then at the nearest steel shutter, now fully lowered. I was trapped. The countdown had begun. I could hear a low, hissing sound start to emit from the air vents in the kitchen. The gas. It was real. I had to obey, but I wouldn't go in blind. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a cast iron skillet, and sprinted out of the kitchen, heading towards the staircase. The stairs were illuminated by a series of floor-level blue LED strips, all automatically controlled. As I reached the midpoint, the lights on the floor-level strips suddenly began to pulse. Not blinking, pulsing, like a massive digital heartbeat. And with each pulse of light, the speaker system in the walls emitted a deep, rhythmic thump. It was the sound of a heartbeat. My heartbeat. The hacker had synced the house to my own fear. I didn't run. I climbed, dragging myself up the stairs, knowing that every move was being broadcast and recorded to a malicious audience. The master bedroom door was wide open, inviting. I held the skillet up, my knuckles white. Is this a trap? What happens after the countdown ends? As I stepped onto the plush carpet of the bedroom, a voice, a deep, male voice, not synthetic, came from the wall speakers. It was distorted, but clearly human. Welcome home, Leo. We have a lot of time to get to know each other. The door behind me slowly, silently, began to close. The heavy thunk of the magnetic lock engaging echoed the finality of my isolation. And outside, the city lights twinkled, indifferent to the nightmare happening on the mountain. My parents didn't leave. They fled. It was 4:30 p.m., a Sunday. Mom got a phone call. Something about her sister, an emergency trip to the coast. 10 minutes later, Dad was backing the sedan out of the driveway, the tires kicking up gravel. "We'll call you when we cross the state line, Maya," Dad yelled out the window. "Stay in. Don't open the door for anyone. Doorbell's still broken. Just be good." And then they were gone. Just like that. I was 16, alone in a sprawling, two-story colonial that felt less like a home and more like a set of connected shadows, especially when the sun started to drop. I was in the kitchen, making a ridiculously large sandwich, enjoying the sudden, absolute freedom. My parents were obsessively tidy. I liked a little chaos. I left the peanut butter jar out, the bread bag open on the counter, and the water running while I grabbed a plate. That's when I noticed the refrigerator door. I was positive I had closed it tight after grabbing the cheese. The seal in our old fridge was stiff. You had to give it a good shove. But now the door was slightly ajar, maybe a 1/4 inch. Not enough for the light to come on, but enough to let the cold air leak out. Did I do that? I frowned, walking over and pushing the heavy door shut with my hip. Maybe I didn't. Who cares? I ate my sandwich in the living room, watching some mindless reality show. The entire house creaked and settled around me. Normal sounds, old house sounds. I went back to the kitchen around 7 p.m. to make popcorn. I opened the pantry door. Our pantry was narrow, deep, and always smelled like flour and cardboard. I reached for the microwave popcorn box on the middle shelf. I stopped. My fingers brushed against a can of soup, Dad's favorite beef stew. The cans were stacked in a specific, ridiculous way, 3 high, perfectly lined up, always facing forward. Mom's rule. But the can I touched wasn't facing forward. It was turned completely around, its label pressed flat against the wall. My breath hitched. This was no accidental turn. It was a deliberate 180-degree pivot. Mom would have noticed. Dad would have died. I quickly turned it back, my heart thumping a warning against my ribs. I told myself it was the cat, Smokey, who sometimes climbed the lower shelves. But Smokey was a chunky Siamese, not a precise vandal. And then I saw the next thing. On the floor, near the back wall, was a faint dusting of white powder. It looked exactly like the bleached flour we kept in a giant canister on the highest shelf. Did I track it in? No. I haven't been in here since lunch, and I was wearing sneakers. I slowly scanned the shelves, my eyes wide. The flour canister lid looked securely closed. A mouse. I desperately wanted it to be a mouse. But a mouse doesn't turn soup cans around. A mouse doesn't leave the fridge door ajar. I quietly closed the pantry door. Now, I wasn't alone in the house. I was alone with someone who had been here before my parents even left. I grabbed my phone. No service. Of course not. We lived just far enough out for the signal to be garbage. The landline was still operational, but it was downstairs in the laundry room. Too far. I needed to be sure. I needed proof that wasn't just my imagination spiraling out of control. I went upstairs to the bathroom and pulled out a spool of white dental floss. I knew the intruder hadn't used the front door. It was always bolted, which meant they used the back. I went downstairs, past the kitchen, to the heavy oak door leading to the backyard deck. I tied a thin strand of floss, tight and low, across the bottom of the door frame. If the door opened, the floss would snap. I did the same thing with the basement door, knotting a piece of floss to the handle and wrapping it around the railing. Now I had tripwires. Now I could wait. I went back upstairs to my bedroom, locked the door, and sat on my bed, staring at the clock. 8:15 p.m. The house was swallowed by night. The silence was the killer. It was so thick I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. 10 minutes passed. 20. Did I imagine it? Maybe I'm just tired. Then, a sound came from downstairs. Not a floor creak. not a groan of the pipes. It was the distinct scrape of metal on wood. It sounded like the stool being dragged across the kitchen floor. My stomach dropped out. I didn't own a bar stool. My parents had one, a heavy wooden step stool for reaching the top shelves. The ones in the pantry. The blood drained from my face. Why would they need the stool? I realized with a crushing, terrifying clarity. They were high up. They had climbed into the highest, darkest recesses of the pantry, maybe into the small, unused attic crawl space above it, which Dad used for storage. They weren't hiding behind the cans. They were hiding above them. And the can was turned around so they could see the light around the door frame without being noticed from the front. The white powder. It was what they tracked down when they came out to move around or when they went into the fridge. I quietly reached for the heavy ceramic lamp on my nightstand. Another sound. This one was softer, slower. A wet, dragging sound. It was coming from the second floor now. The hallway. How did they get upstairs? I hadn't heard the basement or the back door open. The floss would still be intact. They were already upstairs. I crept to my door and put my ear to the cool wood. I held my breath. The dragging sound stopped. Instead, I heard the faint, sickening sound of sniffing. It was right outside my door. It sounded like someone with a bad cold, taking short, sharp inhalations. Were they smelling the air? Were they trying to figure out which room I was in? I backed away, scrambling silently for my phone. I had forgotten about the landline. Downstairs. Too late. I looked around the room wildly. My window was big, but it was a 20-foot drop onto the old oak tree's roots. The sniffing stopped. The voice, dry and raspy, barely a whisper, came through the door. "Little bird, where did your parents go? Did they leave you all alone for me?" The voice was terrifyingly close. So close the wood of the door vibrated against my ear. Then, a new sound. The handle of my bedroom door slowly, painstakingly began to turn. I had locked it, but the old lock was cheap, just a small brass cylinder. It was rattling under pressure. I knew then what they had been doing with the stool. They weren't just checking the attic. They were taking their time. They had been in the house for hours, maybe days, using the space above the pantry as a hidden nest, waiting for the owners to leave. The sound of the lock turning stopped. Instead, I heard a small, sharp click. What was that click? Was it a tool? The pressure on the handle intensified. I knew the lock wouldn't hold. I looked wildly at the window. I had a choice. Wait for the door to burst open and face whatever came in, or break the window and take the risk of the fall. I didn't hear the lock break. I heard the soft, sickening sound of the wood around the latch splintering. I grabbed the ceramic lamp, my heart a terrified drum against my ribs. Why did they want me? Why did they wait until I was home alone? The door suddenly shuddered inward, hanging loosely on one hinge. The figure stood there, framed in the dark hallway, tall, impossibly thin, and carrying something that glinted in the faint hall light. And their eyes, they were wide and completely unblinking.